Hello, I'm Mike Petrarca, and we're entering round 7 with Hanshi Don Culp in this edition of Inside the Ring. In this round, we're going to ask Don how he and his dojo managed getting through COVID and what the experience was for himself. We're also going to find out how a person actually tests for their 9th degree black belt as we head inside the ring.
It's time for Inside the Ring with host Mike Petrarca.
We have to talk about COVID, right? I mean, like, we're out of COVID. It seems like a fever dream, like now. But what was the difference between pre-COVID, during, and post-COVID through all that with your dojo?
Well, the dojo was sustaining itself quite nicely before COVID, so we were doing really good and moving right along. When COVID hit, I was depressed. I'll be honest with you, because it went like that. So everything, my music, my teaching, I was teaching in 2 schools too, teaching underprivileged children. That stopped, and then the dojo stopped. So I had no source of income, and it was very frustrating. And I was really down in the dumps for about 2 weeks. But then I called one of my senior students, Shizen-do Culp, who's been training with me for like 37 years. He's like a dream come true student. He's just the most amazing student and a wonderful, wonderful friend. I said, hey, Joe, you want to get together in my backyard? We'll wear masks if you'd prefer. He said, I'm cool without a mask. I said, let's start working on our system. Because what happened to me is after 30, 40 years of developing my own system, it got too big. I had A, B, C, D options for things. Well, if they grab you this way, then the hand's this way. It just got to be too much. But before I knew it, it's like the testing requirements were like, just way too much. So I said, let's rip the system completely apart and rebuild it. And so I took advantage of the time off. So we had a good year that we would meet every week, couple times a week, and break things down. We redid all the testing requirements, simplified our system. We said we don't need 10 techniques from a front choke. Let's just pick the best one. And out of that, we actually modified and took, like Bruce Lee, absorb it as use. So we took little bits and pieces from different things. Right. And I think really defined the system of Shizen-do to a higher level. So COVID, of course, was a disaster for our society, but I'm proud of the fact that I took advantage of the downtime, and it really helped me develop my system. So it was a positive in some ways. That's what I tried to do with that. Yeah.
And how I want to ask you another question about that. But how does, is it 9th degree black belt?
9th degree, yes.
How do you test? Like, how does a 9th degree black belt test?
Well, you go to a banquet and get macaroni, and then they. Some people do, I think. But,
just bestow it on you.
Yeah, congratulations. Well, that's one way, and that's a fine way. But I'm proud to say that I've physically tested for every one of my belts, from white belt up to 9th degree. And so, as I told you, Soki Kutu is just a dream come true. I just love him like a father, and he would say, "Show me what you've been working on." So it was always several years between each belt. I think from 8th to 9th was probably a good 7 or 8 years, actually, maybe even longer. So I called him up. I said, Soki, I'd like to go for 9th. He says, okay, cool, put a test together. So him and one of his senior students came down, and we just did a demonstration, and that's kind of how I did it. So I showed him the advancements. I'm very creative. I make up a lot of katas, like all my weapons katas. I made up my own empty hand form. So I demonstrated that and just showed him where we're at now with the self-defense. And he loved it, and obviously he awarded me not only the rank of 9th degree, but the title of Hanshi, which is it's an honor to be called Hanshi.
And tell me what Hanshi means.
Hanshi basically means, without sounding egotistical, it means like a superior teacher, someone who's gone to a higher level. And then the next step, at least in this realm, is Soki, which is what he is. And that basically means founder. So since I'm the founder of my own system, that's the logical step for me to take. Although I keep telling my students, I don't want to go for 10th because I still feel like I'm a huge student of it. I don't, but my senior students say, you have to go for, so maybe one day I will. But
well, the passion seems there.
Right now I'm content.
It's a lifelong thing.
Yes, for sure. And I'd like to test in front of Soki Kutu for that honor, but right now it's not on my mind. But that's how the tests went, and they're physical, man. We work hard, you know. I put a lot of time into it. I mean, I say move it to the top of the list, so you have a lot of things in your life. So I move it to number 3 slot, then number 2, and then number 1. It's consuming, because I want my tests to be as represent me to the best level as possible. So
That's
you
wonderful.
prepare for it.
Well, congratulations.
Well,
on the
thank you,
latest
sir.
one.
Thank you.
And now, one final question before we move on to the music aspect, because I know that's a big aspect of your life, too. You just have so much stuff, TC. we talk for hours. I don't even know how long we've been talking. But I got to ask you one more thing about COVID, because, you know, we've all seen remote work kind of take off. You know, people are starting to come back from the office, but we know, you know, there's been virtual healthcare appointments now.
Right.
And then you can do a lot remotely. Do you think there's a place to ever teach people martial arts and do testing remotely at all, or in different areas of the world, with you being here and teaching somebody elsewhere?
That's a great question, and that's something that came out of COVID, I think, as could be a positive. I did a little bit of remote Zoom testing, and I put my iPad on a music stand, and when they say can't see you, so I have to angle it down. Look at my feet, you know. So it wasn't the most comfortable thing to do, but I do think it could be legitimate, because you could certainly see what the student is doing, if they're advancing or not. It's not like you write it in and send them a certificate in the mail.
Right.
But it could be very, like I have a couple of students now that one lives in Maine, actually 2 live in Maine, and there's in New York, and so they can't train with me physically all the time, but they call me all the time, and a lot of times we do. Put your phone on, and I'll show them techniques like with their phone, so they can, you know, FaceTime them. So
Excellent.
Yeah, and so but then they come down once a month, twice a month, and they physically train. But it's a good way to keep the creative juices flowing.
Yeah,
I'm all about it. Yeah, I dig technology to a certain extent. I think there's too much internet, too much cell phones. You know, I think that it's distracting people from being creative. That's a whole nother issue, but there is some benefit for sure.
Turning COVID into an opportunity to refine and modify Shizen-do was just brilliant. And it's ironic to think that Hanshi Don Culp may have to credit a pandemic for the evolution and growth of his system. And speaking of giving credit, Don's high praise for Soki Jin Kutu, who inspired him to test for his 9th degree, says a lot of this man, who once was one of Professor Nick Serio's most honored students. Make sure you join us for round 8 as we ask the question, does music and martial arts go together? That's our next round, Inside the Ring. If you would like to learn more about Hanshi Don Culp, or if you're interested in training at his dojo, his doors are always open at 220 Old Baptist Road in North Kingston, Rhode Island. Or you can visit him on the web at donculp.net or call 401-885-9774.